Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier. That was a terrible impression. Anyway, hello and welcome. I know this video was originally supposed to be me ranking all of the weapon modifications that Payday 3 has to offer, but don't worry, after this video, it will definitely come out. And for some of you that are just constantly waiting for a Dying Light 2 content, don't worry, it will be there. Just wait. I know, like, I'm pulling your leg here from here and there, but trust me, it is going to definitely come. Just give me some time. But hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about every type of, I'm going to be explaining how every single weapon set essentially works, and as well as how every single modification essentially works. How overall Gunkick works, or how does handling work, or how does targeting speed work, and yada yada yada. It's just going to be a very simple video because talking about the weapon modifications, I had to both explain what the mod does and as well as what the stats does. And it turns out the video was going to be like almost an hour long. So I decided, hold on, let me do something else instead of making this a convoluted video. So here we are. So without wasting any more time, let's get into it. Stability determines the gun kick of the weapon. Basically what stability means is how stable your gun is after every shot, because if a weapon has a low stability, then that means the gun is going to jump around a lot more after every shot. It's not recoil where there's like a pattern on both vertical and horizontal, where there's like a small little pattern of where the recoil goes. Stability just sort of has like this randomness to it every time you shoot. It's like gun kick. It will jump around mindlessly if the weapon gun kick is very low, but for a weapon that has a high stability, then it's going to jump around a lot less. Basically, it's visual recoil based on what I've looked around on the internet. I could be wrong about this, but this is what I've somewhat found. It's just pretty much visual recoil, or how much the gun kicks after every shot, or how stable it is after every shot. Now, I could be very much wrong about this one, but what I think accuracy essentially does is it determines how consistent your shot is when you're aiming down your sights, because for some of you that actually don't know, there is a tiny bit of spread that actually exists when you're aiming down your sights. The gun does not always, or the bullet does not always land when you're aiming at, so the higher the accuracy, the more consistent your bullet is going to land where you're aiming at. Meanwhile, weapons that have terrible accuracy, it's going to have a tiny bit of spread, but it's really not that noticeable. Recoil is very easy to understand. It just basically determines how much vertical and as well as horizontal recoil your weapon has. High recoil, that means the weapon has very easy horizontal and vertical recoil to control. Meanwhile, weapons that have low recoil, that means their vertical and as well as horizontal recoil is much more harder to control. But in simpler terms, big recoil means it's not going to go sideways or upwards much more. Weapons that have bad recoil, then that means it's going to go sideways and as well as upwards much more. That's the basic way I can say it. Damage is something that you should not really be paying attention a lot. The only way you should really be deterring on how much damage your weapon does is either through a Steam forums, or you either decide it by yourself via how many hits it takes to either kill a single enemy with like headshots or body shots, because take a look at the FAMAS, and take a look at the sniper rifle. I know, this shit is absurd, so do not believe in the damage. The only time you should really be believing in the damage is if you're checking it out on the forums. So ignore the damage entirely. This is something you should not really be particularly worrying about. Handling may seem a little bit complicated at first, but it is actually very simple because it actually differs to three parts. The first part is it determines how fast you are able to transition from sprinting to firing or running to shooting. Secondly, it also determines how fast you are able to switch your weapons. And thirdly, it also determines how fast you are able to aim down your weapons, whether that be on a scope or that be on an iron sight. And that's pretty much it. I can't really say anything else besides that. Here you go. Fire rate is very easy. The bigger the fire rate, that means it is able to fire bullets much more quicker. The lower the fire rate, that means it is able to shoot bullets much more slower. That's pretty much it. Bigger graph meaning faster bullets come out. Lower graph means the slower bullets come out. Literally monkey explanation. Here you go. Fire mode just sort of determines what type of mode that your weapon fires in. This can be in full auto, semi-auto, or in like bolt action, pump action, and as well as 3-round bursts like the Houston weapon pack number 3. The game will tell you, like say, oh, this weapon shoots only in pump action, this weapon shoots in only single auto, and yada yada yada. It's pretty easy, there's nothing complicated about it. And ammo type, or ammo, just sort of determines how much ammo you have on your magazine and as well as on your reserve. This also changes depending on what type of magazine you have and as well as skills. Compact magazine increases your ammo capacity, yada yada yada, you get the gist of it. For modifications that have overall swapping speed, they can either increase or decrease the speed at which you're able to holster and whip out your weapon. That's pretty much it. How fast you're able to whip out your weapon and how fast you're able to take away your weapon in order to switch to your either secondary or primary holster or draw it out. That's pretty much it. But I tried to explain it in a simple term so people can understand it better. So, yeah. Targeting speed increase or decrease determines how fast you're able to aim down your sights, whether that be on a scope or on a sight or on your iron sights. That's pretty much it. Weapons that have high handling, they're able to aim down the sights much more faster. Weapons with low handling tend to aim down their sights much more slower. So modifications that either increase or that increases the targeting speed is pretty good. But the targeting speed decrease on certain weapons does not really matter, but on weapons that have terrible handling is something you should stay away from. Sprint to fire speed stat is very self-explanatory, but for some of you that don't understand it, it just basically means how fast you're able to go from running to shooting, because weapons that have terrible handling, meaning like the LMG and the SCAR as an example, they take like a second or two before you can actually shoot when you stopped running. While the Ziv Commando and other SMGs that have high handling, then they have a common tendency of being able to transition from running to shooting very quickly. Modifications that have increased sprinting to firing speed basically means like you're able to transition from running to shooting much more quicker, and negative effect just basically means the time it takes to transition from running to shooting is much more slower. It's pretty much it. That sounds like a that sounds like a very complicated poem. Holy shit, the way I think about it right now. My tongue hurts after saying that. Overall, Gunkick is pretty much just a visual recoil. It just basically means how much your weapon jumps around both vertically and horizontally after every shot. For modifications that increases your overall gun kick or makes it better, it just means like they're going to jump around much less, meaning the visual recoil is less intense. But for modifications that makes your gun kick worse, then that means the visual recoil is going to be more intense, and as well as it's going to jump around much more. Basically, take the SCAR as an example. You know how the thing like jumps around a lot? Grab modifications that reduces the gun kick, and there's going to be a tiny bit of difference where it's going to jump around less. Vertical and horizontal recoil are pretty easy. They either make it where your horizontal or vertical recoil is much more tighter or much more wider, meaning like it's going to be much more harder to control. Horizontal recoil is basically sideways, how much your weapon is able to go sideways, and vertical recoil determines how much your weapon is able to go upwards. So for weapons that have a lot of horizontal recoil, go with modifications that reduces horizontal recoil. And for weapons that have a lot of vertical recoil, you can pretty much just go with mods that reduces your vertical recoil. That's pretty much it. I don't think I really need to say much. Horizontal gun kick just sort of increases or decreases the horizontal gun kick of your weapon, meaning it is either going to jump less or jump much more on horizontally. That's pretty much it. For weapons that have low stability, then grabbing something like the Express Muzzle Brake that gives you horizontal gun kick is pretty good. But for weapons that have literally zero stability or have high stability, then grabbing something that reduces horizontal gun kick is not really particularly that good, because you don't really need it after all. Vertical gun kick is the same thing like horizontal gun kick. It just sort of either reduces or increases how much your gun kicks upwards. Basically reduces vertical visual recoil, or either increases or decreases how much your weapon is able to jump vertically after every shot. That's it. Screen shake amplitude may sound confusing at first, but it's actually very simple. Screen shake amplitude just basically means how much your gun shakes when you're aiming down your sights and as well as shooting your weapon. There is no modification that really reduces the screen shake amplitude, but there's only mods that actually makes it better. Plus, it just basically means your weapon is going to shake significantly much less when you're shooting down. It's basically just means like less visual recoil when you're shooting down a scope or on a sight. It's basically overall gun kick, but instead of like controlling the gun kick of the weapon itself, like how much it jumps, it just basically reduces the shakiness of it when you're shooting. That's pretty much it. Overall recoil just sort of either increases or decreases your recoil on both vertically and horizontally, which is pretty good for weapons that have terrible recoil or terrible stability. So yeah, go figures. I don't think I need to say much about this one. Overall spread is going to be very complicated, so please bear with me on this one. So, when you're normally hip-firing your weapon, the reticle or the crosshair starts to become much more wider and bigger, indicating that your hip-firing is going to be much less accurate. What overall spread essentially does is it's making your bullets be more closer to the center, regardless of if your crosshair is wider. It sort of really makes it where your bullets are able to go into the center much more often and as well as be more consistent. Meanwhile, modifications that makes your overall spread worse, meaning it will not focus on the center much more often. It will be like randomly and out of nowhere a lot of the time. But for modifications that increases your overall spread, meaning making it better, then it is going to focus more on the central part much more often. Hipfire spread, again, I could be very wrong about this one because I didn't really notice much difference, so forgive me. I think what the hipfire spread essentially does is it either makes the crosshair tighter or much more bigger when you're moving, walking, or standing still, yada yada yada. Modifications that reduces or makes your hipfire spread worse, then the crosshair will be much more wider. And after you shoot, they're going to move much more, or it's going to widen up much more. Meanwhile, modifications that make your hipfire spread much more better, then they're going to make it where the crosshair is going to be more tighter, and even if you shoot or you move around, it's not going to widen itself out much more. It's a little bit confusing, but I'm doing my best. I'm sorry. The damage distance modifiers is completely useless on most of the weapons, because damage distance makes you assume that it deals more damage against targets that are more further away. That's what I originally thought, but I also thought that it made it where the damage drop-off comes in much more later. Instead of the damage drop-off being 20 meters, I thought it was going to increase it to 25, but it did none of that. The only modification that actually makes a difference on when it comes to the CQC barrel as well as the ranged barrel is on the SA or the DMR. That's the only time that it makes a difference. On every single weapon that has a ranged barrel or a close range barrel, it does absolutely nothing. I have not noticed anything different, nor I have noticed any changes to the weapon whatsoever. They dealt the same amount of damage, it took the same amount of bullets to kill an enemy, so I'm not sure if this is a bug or, you know, the coding is bad, so again, I didn't really notice anything different. The only modification that really makes a difference is on the SA. That's it. Pellet accuracy is pretty easy. It just simply determines how accurate your pellets will be. That's literally it. They're more good on longer distances when you're planning on fighting enemies because they do become much more wider when you try to hit an enemy in the distance. So with the pellet accuracy, it just basically means they're going to become slightly more tighter, which is pretty good. Vertical and horizontal spread radius, it just determines how tight or wide your shotgun pellets is going to become. Plus means on the vertical side the shotgun spread is going to be much more tighter, or as an example, minus horizontal spread radius just basically means that the horizontal side of the spread is going to be much more wider, meaning it's going to be much more worse. That's it. There's really not much else to say. The way initial recoil essentially works is it only works with automatic weapons, or at least that's what I noticed, and as well as on DMRs, but I mostly noticed it on assault rifles. So, the way the initial recoil sort of functions is with tap firing, or with your burst firing your fully automatic weapons. Because there is a little bit more recoil when you're tap firing the weapon than when you're normally holding it down, essentially. So, weapon modifications that decreases the initial recoil, or that has a plus, excuse me, then that means tap firing your weapon is going to be much more accurate because the recoil when you're tap firing is going to be much less intense. Meanwhile, modifications that reduces your initial recoil, that means your tap firing accuracy is going to be much less accurate, obviously. And the recoil of tap firing is going to be much more higher. It's a little bit complicated, but I hope I explained it well. Recoil recovery is very simple, and it is only exclusive for the shotguns, even though I didn't really notice much, but what a recoil recovery essentially does, it basically means like your camera returns to its original position after you shot your weapon. That's pretty much it, but I didn't really notice much, so don't quote me on that one. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not really complicated, it only essentially means like your camera just goes back faster after you shoot, and that's pretty much it. It's only exclusive to the shotguns, which is kind of weird, but I'm not going to question it. So, yeah, there it is. A modification that allows you to go back to your original position, or your original crosshair position after you're done shooting. That's it. Cycle speed is very simple. It just increases how fast you're able to cock your weapon, whether that be the shotgun, because yeah, no, that's actually the only weapon that has this feature. Cycle speed just makes it where you're able to like cock your shotgun much more faster. That's pretty much it. I don't think I really need to say much. So, yeah. Reload speed is very easy. They either decrease it or they either increase it. That's pretty much it. Magazine capacity just sort of determines on a modification that either increases how much bullet it has in the magazine or how much less they have. Like the example, compact magazine reduces the amount of ammo it has, and the extended magazine increases how much ammo it has in its magazine. Some weapons have 20 round magazine on the compact magazine, some of them have 25, some of them have 10, and every weapon is different, so do not expect all of them to have the exact same amount of bullets on the magazine. Take the example being the FIK, where an extended magazine gives it a 35 round magazine, meanwhile the MP7 gives it a 40, so every weapon is completely different. The iron sight modifications are literally exclusive to shotguns only, which is kind of strange, but I'm not going to say much, but it just basically makes your iron sights much more cleaner to look at. That's it. Red dot sights are very self-explanatory. They are a sight that emits a red dot. All of them are different, they have their own different types of styles of red dot sights, and they mostly have a very small zoom. Some of them have 1.15, some of them have 1.12 or 1.2, and that's pretty much it. There's really not much else to say about this one other than it's a close range scope, or a sight, pardon. Optic sights are your stereotypical slightly zoomed in scopes that are more focused on mid-range engagements. There's three types. There are 1.3, 1.8, and 2 times scopes. That's pretty much it. They're not really sniper scopes, they're more or less just an optical sight that focuses on mid-range that are mostly commonly found on assault rifles. You can't really find these on SMGs, but you sort of find them on snipers, but they're not really that effective on them, so yeah. For scope sights, they're mostly only found on DMRs and as well as the sniper rifle. This either comes from 5x or 6 times. These are mostly effective for long-range engagements. That is all I have to offer, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry if this video feels a little bit lackluster or it does not have any effort put into it. I'm kinda lazy at the moment, so yeah, and I'm also a little bit busy with college. Well, I didn't start, but I'm more or less about to do like some exams that it's more like an interview, I guess you could say. It's not really an exam, but it's more or less like an interview, so yeah. Sorry if it feels a little bit lackluster or lazy. I'm kind of lazy at the moment and don't really feel like doing anything at the moment, so I apologize. For some of you that are waiting for Downlight 2 content, don't worry, I will be with you very shortly. After one more video comes out, I will upload 4 more videos. And yes, I know I broke the rule of me uploading 3 videos for every game, but shut up, this is my channel, so who cares. But without wasting any time, I wish you all the best, have a good day or night, keep yourself safe, and treat each other with respect. Goodbye.